Hello, everybody, and welcome along to the history program with me, Tony Browne, from the Limerick Historical Society. And this is broadcast, of course, on livermedia.tv, or go to YouTube and you'll find it anywhere. And don't forget to subscribe to the button on the corner of the screen. Just subscribe, click the subscribe button. Doesn't cost anything. It just gives us an idea how many people are kind of listening. Anyway, as usual, I have Tom Donovan with me. Tom, you're welcome to the program anyway.
Good evening, Tony.
And this week's victim is all the way from, I shouldn't be saying that, but this week's guest, it sounds nicer anyway, is all the way from West Limerick, is Seamus O'Suilleabhain. Seamus, you're welcome to the program.
Very good, Tony.
Oh, at least, and we can see you as well, you know.
That's
anyway,
good.
Today we're going to discuss portions of West Limerick, kind of down in this. If we're looking at a map of Limerick, it's kind of down in the bottom left-hand corner, a portion of the Monarchs, and we're kind of going into County Cork and that area there. But the village of Broadford. Now, don't get it confused between there's a Broadford in Limerick and there's one in Clare. People often say, which Broadford are you talking about? We're talking about the one in County Limerick, which is out there, I suppose, in Drumculloch. What way would you describe, Seamus? First of all, Broadford. Why is it called Broadford, for starters?
That's an interesting one, Tony, because the Irish speakers in the 1840s referred to the place as Ballinaha. And by right, the place should be Ballina. You know, it should have been anglicised Ballina.
Yeah.
But at the end of the 18th century, they built a bridge behind the village. Or the village was actually back that way at that time. That would be about a half a mile west of where I'm living now. And we had the stream that comes down has a large catchment from the mountains above us, and huge floods come in the winter time. And there's a vein of prime land running through Broadford, coming back from Kilmallock, Charleville, Newtown, Milford, Drum, Broadford, and going back almost to Ashford. So there were a lot of gentry houses all along the way. And they, of course, they controlled the county council at the time, the grand jury. And they got this bridge built in the I think 1760s or 70s, and they sort of translated the Ballinaha, which is the mouth of the ford. The stream used to widen there, and I suppose it was passable, but so they called the bridge Broadford Bridge.
What river have we there?
It's a stream, really. It's the Comishke. It's a tributary of the Bonoke, and it gets its name. Combe is twisted, you know. It's very windy towards the end. Just before it joins the Bonoke, there are a succession of maybe half a dozen very pronounced loops in the river. And so when the church got on its feet, then the first Catholic chapel that was built in Broadford, there were mass houses now in the 18th century, as you know yourself. We don't know where the mass houses are located here, but the first chapel was built in the house I'm living at, which is on the corner to Newcastle West. And the old parish centre was the graveyard of Killochwillyhan. You might know, Tony. It's about a mile and a half to the south, towards the Cork border. But there were important quarries here in the 18th and 19th century, and 5 quarries were being worked down here where the village developed afterwards. And the church was actually built, I suppose, to accommodate those here on the corner for the road to Newcastle. And the priest was a progressive man. He was Archdeacon Fitzgerald afterwards, Michael Fitzgerald. He was parish priest of Drumculloch, and he was the man that went down to mark Thomas' neighbour below. I think he was the Reverend Russell. He was proselytizing in a big way and in a successful way in Askeaton. And he finished up actually as parish priest of Ballingarry. You know, he's very prominent in the first half of the 19th century. Yeah, like a lot of the progressive clergy, Tony, he was anglicising. Okay.
Yeah, Tom, have you heard of him, Tom? Had you heard of this Fitzgerald?
Oh yeah, he was. I think Murray the fellow Seamus.
He was, Tom. Yeah, he was. Yeah. He was. Yeah. And the gentry eventually got rid of him because he was stirring up sectarian stuff. You know.
He was moved up to I was telling Tony. I talked to Tony there recently, but he was moved up to the diocese of Arda. Murray was moved to the diocese of Arda.
Arda. Yeah.
Arda diocese.
Longford, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. They got rid of him because there was a sectarian reaction, you know, that they were
Yeah.
always touchy about, people. But basically, he called his lovely new chapel Broadford Chapel, Tony.
Mm.
You know,
But you mentioned
on that
Killarney
score, we'd say Broadford, Killarney becomes Broadford, Killeedy becomes the Ashford Union, Mahona becomes Castlemehan, Kilbillan becomes Milford in the County Cork. It was universal, like, you know, which is, you know, I suppose when they got Maynooth established, they had a good grip in the church. Like.
Yeah.
Because
It's pity, but see, it'd be very hard to go back now, Seamus. We naming places because we had it down in Dingle and to a lesser extent in my van, Newtown Sands. You know, people have got so used to the names, it's very hard to go back and change it, you know.
Yes.
What do you think?
Ah, well, yes, and you'd wonder if we'll survive at all, you know. But that's how the Broadford thing came in, and the village then developed around. It was a chapel village, like Patrick O'Connor says in his book, you know. Broadford was a kind of a classic chapel village, and then the pubs, and we got the telegraph office and the post office and a police station. Not a police station, no, we had a constabulary barracks. That meant that they lived at home. And had a hoot in the village, the police, a sergeant and three.
That was a good compliment. There must be a bit of trouble there, you know.
Yes.
Trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I went with yes, I suppose we're very near the Cork border, you know. But I suppose what dominated our place really was the castle in Springfield or Gutnet Tibberet Castle.
Yeah.
To give it its you're both very familiar with it. It was an important cadet branch of the Fitzgeralds, and it was marking the Irish of North Cork, we'll say, McCarthy, O'Callaghan, O'Keefe, and McConnell.
That's why you had the police barracks, you know. It was a significant landlord locally, you got a police barracks, but if there was no landlord, they let them to their own devices. They didn't really, you know.
And that's it, Tom, we say about your country down, that behind us we have Ashford, and that it got its name from Monsters estate. Is there an Ashford estate belong to the Monsters down there?
No, not that I know.
Yeah, I think I came across it myself or something, but that was
I know.
Ashford got his name from that.
I've never heard of it, but that doesn't mean. You see, in Clarina, it's only recently a man was asking me. There was 3 police barracks in Clarina, but you had like you had Lord Emley and you had Lord Clarina, and then you had the Coopers. There was a lot of significant landlords around, but a lot of trouble to go with as well.
Okay.
So we three police barracks within about a 3-mile radius, you know.
Okay.
So they were causing trouble back then. The Patrickswell and Browne boys were causing trouble, you know.
Okay.
But you mentioned Seamus there now. You mentioned Gutnet Tibberet. First of all, you said about the McCarthys, right?
Right.
The Deans, the Musgraves, even that's the McCarthy title, wasn't it?
It
Musgrave.
is. Well, of course, Dean had married in, which said the basic history, Tony, is they were there for about 400 years. And the last Fitzgerald was Sir John Fitzgerald. And he was in Irish known as Tiernan a Cleanglass, you know. And he was colonel of the Limerick Brigade of Infantry in the Jacobite Army. And he decided to go to France, we'll say, with James II. And his estate was confiscated. By the treaty, the articles of the treaty, the officers secured their estates, you know. That's why the Glens of Antrim remained Catholic, because the Earl of Antrim didn't go to France and he observed the treaty, but they confiscated 1.8 million acres that time, from the time of that war. And they were all sold about 10 years later. And Fitzmaurice from North Kerry, but he was off the main line of the Fitzmaurices. He bought the estate. He was a Captain William Fitzmaurice, and he was in the Williamite army, but he had 2 brothers in the Jacobite army. So the Fitzmaurices were going to survive, whichever side won. And eventually there was his granddaughter was an important heiress, wealthy and large estate and that, and she was Sir Robert Dean from North Cork. They were a prominent family in North Cork. He married her, and we'll say that's the Cork connection, I suppose. He knew the importance of the Musgrave title and it was confiscated after the 1641 rising. And so that's what was, and he took their motto as well, of course. You start off at the gates, you know, to the brave and the faithful. Nothing is, what is it? 48 fideli. Nothing is difficult. Nihil difficult.
Inside, there's nothing left now. The new house was Springfield then, wasn't it? That was built quite.
Well, we'll say it was a casualty of the War of Independence down here.
Yeah,
the old
but
castle, like we'll say, when he bought in the sale of that in 1703, there's already a manor house there.
Yes.
Attached to the tower house you were talking about now.
Tower house, yeah.
And that survived up to the War of Independence. And things were hot here because we were near the Cork border. You know, there was a lot of influence. Cork was a very active county. And there was an ambush in Drumculliher during the War of Independence. And they shot a couple of tans there. And there were official reprisals in that. But basically, they were afraid that Springfield would be occupied as a military barracks, and they burned it.
Yeah.
Springfield was burned by the RA. And they will say, as the codicil of the treaty, then the Brits built the houses which they had burned, and the Irish had to compensate or rebuild the houses that the IRA had destroyed, and Springfield was one of those.
But inside in the yard in Springfield, something I remember seeing there before, there's a statue of the monkey.
There is, all right.
Part of the Fitzgerald's crest.
It is, all right. Sean and Rapper, that's right.
Yeah, that's inside the yard. I remember seeing that inside the yard. Is it an ape, I think, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
The
tradition being that he said the ape saved the baby, you know.
That's right,
the baby up to, you're right.
Yeah, that's inside the yard. I remember seeing that before.
Yeah, there's a very fine restoration job done there now, if you've seen it lately, Tony.
I heard that. I haven't seen it though, but I heard that.
Very impressive now.
You know, Tom, there's been a big restoration job on the Tower House.
Yeah, well, we both went by it there, Tony, last year during the lockdown.
We did. That's another story. But the statue sent out.
Yeah, we were out. But it's lovely coming in. It's lovely countryside there. You know, on a fine day coming from, we'll say, from Killeedy Graveyard down into Broadford, you know.
What is that? All right. Yeah.
You have it's a pity the old what's the name? They're married into Nightingale. Archbishop Croke's mother.
Plumbers.
The plumbers.
Yeah.
It's a pity.
Mount Plumbers, Seamus is gone.
Oh yes, the plumbers. Yeah. And then of course you had Landulph Castle behind that, Tom.
Oh, Landulph, yeah.
Landulph, you know, which is another important place, you know.
We're talking about that there with the Ivors on.
I'd one of the Ivors on, Seamus, a few weeks ago.
That's right. But the real family, the family that really owned it, well, the Ivors were tenants there.
Yeah,
Mount Ivors, you know.
Stavely
was the name of the family that owned it.
Yeah.
And they purchased a large amount of the Courtney estate in 1811. They bought Drumculliher. You know, he was the main landlord, John Stavely, around Drumculliher.
Where did you come from?
I tell you now, the Staveleys came to Ireland, Tom, with the Cromwellian army.
All right.
And they lived in County Antrim for a while. And they got into they were traders. They got into the developing linen industry, that sort of thing. And they prospered anyway. And they moved, one of them moved to Cork City, where he prospered very much. And he bought this estate. You know,
and did they try? I didn't try growing flax or doing linen there. Was there any evidence of?
No, I think that they were traders rather than, you know, that. Although there was a tradition that we had a Palatine colony here, as you know, Tom, you said, in Rathpalatine, you know. They introduced it. They were doing flax growing because those ponds are still about there, you know. That they
the bleach greens.
I didn't know there were Palatines out. Where?
It is a bit just across the road from the back gate of Springfield Estate. You know, if you came out the back way.
I didn't know that,
Yeah, there's a Rathpalatine there. It is actually in the parish of Mahona, Fiona Castlemahon.
Who brought them in? Who brought the Palatines in there?
I'll tell you, Fitzmaurice did.
Fitzmaurice
did, yeah. And but they were badly treated, as you know yourself. They got 8 acres of land, you know. And just what a man would till with a spade. And I don't have to tell you that the Palatines weren't accepted by the Protestant elite, you know. They just used them as they were good farmers and they were good soldiers, you know.
Yeah.
But they got a blunderbuss, didn't they? They got a blunderbuss.
Say it again, Tommy.
Did they get a blunderbuss as well with their end?
Oh yeah, sure. They had him in the militias and that, you know.
Yeah. There was a lot of them in the police. A lot of them joined the police, and they were in the, as you said, the militia.
Oh yes, yeah,
And
the
like,
German this and German that, you know.
yeah, but there were,
A
there were
German,
a lot of times, you know, people say it was sectarian attacks, but a lot of times they were only attacked for their guns. They were robbed for their guns. The
Yeah, for the guns. Oh yeah.
yeah. But of course, they were very good farmers, and you see, a landlord would when he'd evict somebody, he'd like to get him in as farmers because they were superior farmers. But they'd be targeted for revenge. Then they're going to taking the land.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, that was the downside of it. You know.
Yeah. And there's lots.
I was surprised to read when I first learned about Archbishop Cork. Was his mother was a plumber.
That's right.
It's very hard to believe, you know.
Yeah.
And I would have to believe in the sense that you associate the plumbers with landlordism and with the established church.
Yeah, but I tell you, Tony, of course, probably the most important one was Blunderman Plummer. He was there around 1800 for 20 years afterwards. But he married a daughter of the Knight of Glen, which gives him a very big status in Limerick, you know, because the Glens brought the Geraldine thing with him. And the Plumbers often called their daughters, used the name Geraldine. They were very proud of the Fitzgerald connection.
Yeah.
But there was
they're buried in Springfield here, because.
Oh yeah, her mother wasn't impressed though, Seamus. Her mother never spoke to her.
Is that right?
Yeah. Sorry, the plumber lady never spoke to the Croke woman because to make matters worse, she married somebody in trade. Croke was in trade.
I know.
In Tralee, like that was a step down.
Okay.
You know, from the
yeah. But the plumber becomes is it governor of County Limerick about 1808 town, which I'm sure was the Geraldine connection, like. He
was in care of the Knight of Glen's estate as well, because the young knight was when the knight died in 1803. The young knight hadn't come of age, so he was managing the estate. Yeah,
he was very active. He was very active against Captain Rock, Tom. The Rockites.
Yeah.
I came across where he visited the chapels, including where I'm living myself, to address the people, you know, to hand up the arms.
Yeah.
But, which meant that he spoke Irish, because they were universally Irish speaking. But at that time, you know, I would say 90% were probably monoglot Irish speakers at that time.
Yeah. The Knights of Glen spoke Irish right up to the.
Right. I tell you what, I came across an incident, Tom, about the Rockites taking Mount Plummer. They took Springfield as well in 1822. And in both instances, they were respectful to the women that were in the house. They were both of Irish origin. She was Fitzmaurice.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure they spoke Irish, you know, and the other woman had the Geraldine connection, like, and they make a reference in the papers about that they were respectful. The men ran because they'd be murdered, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's an interesting history, all right.
Oh yeah, but the old people would always have respect for the Gaelic chieftains, you know, and even if they married the Sassenach, they still had.
But the note said that the steward had to run for his life.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have qualified under the same thing.
Oh no, the steward would stand more danger than the landlord. Yeah.
There is there's something just coming to my head there now, which is just a small little matter. I've never forgotten the name of the church in Bradford. Our Lady of the Snows, isn't it?
Right. That's gone back to early Christianity, Tony. It's very interesting, Shanachus, you know. And this district was Irish speaking. There were Irish speakers here. We had, in 1929, about 30 of them, I think, the old people, you know. So it was passed down intact. And there was a teaching family here by the name of Grogan, you know, and they had it. And that's how we got all the stories. But it's the people couldn't agree, apparently. It would have become Christian very early, according to St. Ita.
Yeah.
St. Ita is bouncing us, and she's very near. And we have a townland here called Killeen, you know, and it was actually attached to Killedia, you know. It was a fertile, to be arable ground, which was important, and it would be scarce enough back in Killedia. So they couldn't agree where to build a chapel, and that this snowfall came, and the plan where the church was laid out, where it is now. Kiel comes from the Latin Kella, small church. Kiel, then can be a field or a lawn, and Johannes translates as line.
But it's a usual name for a church.
It
I
is.
never think there's any other church I hear called after.
Yeah, I tell you, eventually, Tony, they built a Protestant church over in Springfield. And they polished up the name, you know. I'm sure O'Suilleabhain was a mouthful, you know. So
yeah, okay.
It's O'Suilleabhain by the time it comes down.
Oh yeah, but O'Suilleabhain is very interesting. The church just left there.
Oh, it's lovely, right? It's one of the best examples of a medieval parish church in County Limerick.
The lovely style, which is so small.
It is.
It's unusual.
And of course, you had the Protestant Sullivans alongside it. Then it was on their estate. You
Oh,
mentioned the
Corrimore,
plumbers,
yeah.
you know. You had the
Yeah,
Sullivans.
Corrimore, yeah.
They were the Corrimore people, yeah.
Corrimore, yeah.
They were Banmore before that. We'll say they're there a long time. They came up from Clonca, you know, the Sullivan tomb, the Clonca graveyard.
Yeah, I do.
They came up, I think, about 1680. And they were Catholic and they were Protestant as the wind was blowing, you know.
Yeah.
And, eventually, at the time of the War of Independence, again, I mentioned this place was hot, you know. He was afraid that, I suppose he was afraid for his life. The last one of them, he went to Devonshire, where his wife was from. You know, the last
Sullivan,
he was known as the miner Sullivan. He was mining around our country for column, a poor quality coal. The miner Sullivan, and he had 5 motor cars, Tom, that were confiscated by the IRA. So he probably thought it was getting out time.
Yeah.
But he survived, and and he took servants over with him, and he had his a chauffeur. He had a chauffeur. That was an important ambush in North Carolina, very important ambush. Clonbannon. You know, it came after the capture of Mallow Barracks. And Mallow Barracks, they took the World of Armaments, and there was a major ambush on about 15 British Army trucks. And it was a 1-all draw that could knock out the armoured cars. But your man's driver and drove the IRA fellas from here up to that fight in his own car.
His own car,
It cost him his job, but the boys knew that's as far as they went. They left it after that.
He lost his pension, did he? One time, sorry, you got to say something, Tom?
No, I just before we go on, just mention our brother. You know,
right?
Dahi O'Brother. He's like.
I was just going to do it now. Actually, that's how I was going to.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, when you're going in the gates of Springfield, there's a plaque on the wall.
Right.
You know what the statue in a minute. We'll get to the statue in a minute now. But there's a plaque on the wall of Springfield.
There is.
About Dahi O'Brother.
That's right.
Who was Dahi O'Brother? Who was he?
I'll tell you, he was originally from East Cork. Or his country was East Cork, which is a very fine country and is always important, Tony. We say the district I'm in, you see, has good quality land. You know, and if you're wealthy, you're in a position to cause a bit of trouble. And there was a tradition of an O'Daly school here in Tullaha. You would have heard of Tullaha. I mean, this is the town and the Tullaha here that I'm in now. And there's Tulloch in the skull. And that he trained at O'Daly school, which gave him the connection with here. And his 2 main patrons were the man in Cahermile and Gortna Tibberet Castle. So he kind of transferred, he spent most of his productive life here in County Limerick, and his poetry covers all the troublesome period of the Cromwellians, and afterwards we said the Williamite War, and he finishes up, of course, working with the farmers to earn a living, which was sad all in for in the new Oxford History of Ireland. I think it's O'Keefe that writes the article in Irish, claimed that he was the best writer ever in the Irish language. And there are 5 accepted top men, and that would probably one think of O'Rahilly was one of them. You had the 2 clergymen from Tipperary, and they're all brothers. And there were 3 were Normans: Piers Ferreter, Podgin Hackade, and Shatron Caton, and Dahi O'Brother.
Why is there a plaque in Springfield to him? Why is the plaque there at the gates of Springfield?
I would say that was put up there well before it was the Gordon Island and Colour that put it up there. And it was the famous sculptor Seamus Murphy.
Seamus Murphy, got that,
and in the committee used to refer to him as Dear Seamus. The letters were Dear Seamus, but Seamus was on the dear side when it came to pay him. And then afterwards, we say about the statue, in Fair Play to in Drum.
The statue's lovely now.
They were going to put Dahi up in the middle of the square, you know. So that was a bit of an insurrection at this side. And a committee came together anyway. But it's really a very fine job. Which and I don't think it could be done now. You know that we.
But
don't
it's kind of lost when it is. You don't notice it.
I know.
You've gone past. It's a pity it's not in the square.
Yeah.
Something else.
Yeah.
You know, because
we thought we'd better claim, Tony.
Yeah, but unfortunately, because it's a beautiful statue.
It's things like that keep the GA alive, Seamus. You know?
Yes.
Local. All politics is local, you know.
Yeah.
Well, chalk it down. But it's a pity. But like that.
I remember the county manager being there the day of the unveiling and saying they're progressive enough, but Gulliher and Broadford, Tony, they have good local committees in that, you know.
Yeah.
He was saying he'd like to see the other parishes take a lead from him. So that well in with the county council, I think. But they got
because how far are the villages of Broadford and Drumculliher apart?
It'd be less than 3 miles, Sonny.
Yeah, it was very close there. You didn't realise that.
Your entrance to Springfield Castle will be about halfway.
Yeah. Tell me this: when Rissa, what way was the countryside around Broadford? To me, it looked like it was bad land.
I tell you what it is now, Tony, and I know it well. There's a vein of prime land, the arable land, we'll say, going right through the middle. And it varies in width now, but maybe from a quarter to a half a mile wide. But outside it, north and south, you've prime grassland. But that can get heavy, Tony. It gets heavy as you go back. Yeah, by that I mean to be wettish, you know. But it's very productive land because that grassland is very important for milk production, and this was a milk country here. You know, Cantor Creamery was one of the major milk producing districts in Ireland. You know.
But how did it fare? How did Broadford and that general area fare under the famine? With the landlords, how did it fare out the people?
Yeah, you're right to say the same as everywhere else, Tony. The same as everywhere else. There were bad evictions, but they weren't reported. You know, there were ferocious drops in the census between 1841 and 51 in some townlands, which can only be accounted for by clearances.
But Seamus, you addressed that in your book. You know, the book that you wrote on the famine. I mean. Like, to me, there was nothing, like, apart from reading the newspapers of the time, there was nothing available on the famine in your area until you wrote about it.
Oh, there was not about it at all. I would say the general impression was that nothing happened.
No,
Nothing happened. And instead, I'll tell you one thing on that now. They done a survey on housing in the 1841 census just to establish wealth, right? And the county with the 5th highest density of single-room mud cabins was County Limerick. Yeah. You know, and nobody knows what the whole thing was a rich county, but the opposite was that we said the poor were being pushed up to the heather and down to the bog.
Yeah. I mean, I think those one-room cabins, they were only scarps. They weren't even what you could call a house of today. Like, you know, they wouldn't even qualify as a house. You know. Like,
no, they were terrible, really.
Some of them just survived into the early 20th century, you know, in where you see them, and they're like, you wouldn't put animals in them today, you know.
That's true, right? Yeah.
And
sorry, Tony, we say one of the features of that island was early marriage.
Yeah.
Right. And it was seen as a major problem, you know, they were having marrying too young. But there were several reasons why that happened. But the main one was that the poor had been reduced to such a depth of poverty that no matter what they'd done, it couldn't make their situation worse. There was no European society saw the poverty that was in Ireland by the 1840s. You know, it's kind of glossed over afterwards. Then, when the problem was solved by immigration and by
but Seamus, it's a complex area because, you know, people that say it's Britain trying to exterminate Irish people, but there was Irish people who were conniving in that, you know, stocking up.
I think, Tom, that we say the British couldn't do what they done in Ireland between 45 and 52 without connivance from Irish Catholics.
Yeah.
So,
from their own people who benefited out of the liquidation of the poor.
Yeah.
That is true.
I mean, if you look at the churches that were built during the famine, you know, on the back of poverty, it's just amazing. Like that, you know. But you see, you had like you had hunts going on. Life went on during the family.
You had oh yes.
The country.
I mentioned a race meeting that was held here in Bradford during that. I came across, and it came. I picked it up in I suppose the Observer, maybe the Chronicle rather. That it was near where the Limerick hunt was reported, and you had 4 or 5 farmers here in Bradford. Obviously, the better off farmers. And they held a race meeting on the public roadway, obviously a dispute over who had the best horse, They raced of a Sunday, and the following Friday, they were tried below Newcastle, and it's 1848, the year of the revolutions, right?
Yeah.
And 3 magistrates sat on the bench, Lord Musgrave and our friend Evans behind in Glanduff Castle, and Galway was stipendary magistrate, And they fined them 5 shillings, but they confiscated the horses, which were worth £75, gave them either to the police or the cavalry, But we said when they were racing horses, they wasn't worried about the starving poor. Like.
No.
Where was the fair held? Was there a fair in Bradford, or was it held in Drumconnor?
No, Drum was famous for its fairs. They had a large number of fairs, and it was held in the town on the square, And it's not a square, Tony. It's actually a diamond, like the old towns. It's a diamond, and it's a Courtney estate town. It was both Newcastle in itself. It was started by the Courtney estates. I would say to develop. They say that when Stavely bought it, then that he hadn't the money to develop a town, he had to put the money into to develop it.
Yeah. And who developed Bradford? Was it Stavely or who?
No, I'd say it was just came in, followed the chapel, Tom. I'd say.
It wasn't,
the pubs and the shops and that started coming for the.
It was just it grew up rather than being
right. And you had smiths then and carpenters and that, and it became a kind of I remember McDeland. There were O'Donnell said before the land married into O'Donnell. And they were blacksmiths, but they used to be saying about doing the horse work and the farm work, and the Clancys were making cars. They were coach builders, and they'd be all laid up for Sunday. And they'd be vetted at mass, after mass. The fellas would check all these types of cars, That was all. That was, those were lively villages. The small towns are stone dead now. Don't mind the villages.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But you mentioned there about the horse racing on the road. It wasn't the fact that they were racing on the road. It was the fact that it was on the Sabbath. I mean, that was like
it was. What they were charged with was racing on the Queen's Highway, Tom. But with the comeuppance of the boys to take on the same sport as the gentry was the problem.
Oh yeah. If they were hurling or bowling, they'd be not.
That's right. They'd be left at it.
Yeah, they're getting above their station.
Dust, Tom.
above their station. Yeah.
How far away are you from the Mullaghurks?
About 6 miles, Tony. I'd say. The hills here would be the foothills of the Mullaghurks, and it's of the view. You can see 5 counties from it. It isn't that high at all. It's 1340 high, 1,340 feet above sea level, and you have 2 rows of mountains, 3 or 4 mountains. They form the Mullaghurk Mountains. Of course, that was where all the troublesome boys from County Limerick, the white boys and the rockheads and the rest ran for cover. They ran for the mountains.
Yeah, to the mountains. Yeah. Because he did good work on that. Pat Feely, he interviewed a lot of what he called the mountaineer men from the Mullaghurks.
Right. Okay.
Then he interviewed, that lived in the mountains,
Right.
And there were hard men and hard times as well, bad men, and just about survived on the hillside.
The reason the built roads.
But on that, Tony, the parishes you mentioned that here, the parishes with the poor land did a lot better than the parishes with the rich land, because they had a kind of commonage on the mountain. If you had 2 or 3 cows running, you'd survive.
Yeah,
but if you were in Ballingarry, all the land was in the main, and you were up in the Knockfearna Hills, and you were down a hole,
Yeah, but the thing about down the Tay as well, a lot of them had they used to brew their own liquor and everything, and they weren't, because there was no access there until 1836. They had the free run, like the military couldn't get in because of the bog land, And that's why the roads. People say like they were very good to build the roads. The reason they built the roads was to keep the
military, right, to get the boys.
Yeah.
The population in that day went up 10% between 41 and 51.
Yeah.
You know, it went up in very few parishes.
Yeah, I think
they done better than in the good land.
In Glen it increased as well, but that was due to the workhouse. Afterwards, like, you know.
I know.
But, but they had auxiliary workhouses and people used to flock in for the food, so it increased the population. You know.
I came across from your country, Tom. We'll say they all had cabbage. You know, all the poor people, they grew a lot of cabbage, but it won't sustain life. But I remember in Shannagolden, they had seaweed as well. It was being brought up from the estuary. They were going around the donkey and cars selling seaweed.
Yeah, they said it was only used as fertilizer before that, but then they started eating it, like, you know. The seaweed. But I like the stories of people being found with cabbage water in their mouth trying to survive.
Right.
How did the population go up? You said in the Tay. How did the population go up there?
What I'm saying is, Tom, I suppose it was probably underpopulated for the size of the parish, maybe, and there was a lot of common land in the mountain, and you know, animals would survive. You know that you see, nothing failed on the potato. They were always eating turnips, but nothing would sustain life except the potato and rice. I think are the only two vegetables that you can live on. But they were bad old times, all right. And nobody wrote about them then, Tom. You see, there were witnesses in every parish. There were clergy and police and this, that, and other, but nobody, very few wrote anything about them.
Yeah.
In his history of Limerick, Lenahan skips over the famine.
20 years afterwards,
He doesn't talk about the famine at all.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's
Begley's history of the diocese is now 3 big volumes, you know.
Yeah.
He does it all in 3.5 pages.
Yeah,
and
it
it was
does.
a glorious period for the Catholic Church. It would be a different story. But at the same score, we say Maurice Linehan in his fine book, History of Ireland, he does the Young Irelanders, you know. He was a prominent member. He does them in 4.5 lines.
Yes,
They were all able not to see things when they wanted.
Convenient amnesia,
yeah. I keep on forgetting to tell people who we have with me. I've myself and Tom are here as usual, and we've Seamus O'Suilleabhain here from Bradford in County Limerick. Out, I suppose, really out there, Drumculloch, the Bradford in Limerick now, as opposed to the one in Clare.
On the Cork border, Tom.
What about your own book? You have the copy of it there handy, have you? Your own book in the family.
Yeah, I have a good. I know. Yes, what you ask me about it?
No, there is the one there near you, just to hold it up. You haven't one handy there, have you?
That's what they would have, yeah.
Yeah, just to get it up and show it to people, you know.
I'm looking at his bookshelf there to see what he's on.
I'm just looking through it. I'm trying to read what he has in the shelves behind him when he's talking there.
That's funny.
That's a fine book, you know.
Fine book, all right.
What year did that come out?
2015.
2015. So because it's 6 years old, you know. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's 430 pages in total now. There are, I think there's 368 pages of text. And
and I tell you, when you're only dealing with 5 years, Seamus, you know.
Right.
But they have 5 years and that much material
5
there.
years, yeah. 400 pages for 5 years. Yeah.
It's
same with Tom Toomey's book and the War of Independence.
Yeah.
Right.
You know. Another big tome as well, you know.
Is that all right?
The books are holding back the door, you know. That's one thing.
Have you many left, Seamus? Have you any for sale?
Have I any books left? Thomas,
that book.
I held on to a few of them, all right.
But I mean, are they for sale or are they heirlooms?
I'm not hearing you, Tom.
Are they for sale or are they heirlooms?
I dole them out rather than anything else. To tell you the truth.
To interested parties,
Right, exactly. For people that, I have about 30 left, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But every now and again I give them to someone that it would be important to.
Yeah. There's nothing worse than giving a book to a person and 10 years later the spine isn't even bent in it. You know.
Yeah, that's true.
That happens, unfortunately. And give a person a book. If a person gets a book free, it's the worst thing ever. because they don't appreciate them, you know.
Right.
I must get that book now, and they've no interest in it, you know.
That's
You
true.
could give a book on Mickey Mouse now, and they'd be better off, you know, half
Right.
the time. That's a story for another day, you know. But getting back to Bradford, outside, the estate, there is still a big significant house at Springfield. The big house that's there now, it isn't
Right.
the main house as such, but it's
Okay.
a significant house
Right.
that Musgraves had, the Sykes have there in Drumcollar.
Jonathan
Okay.
Sykes.
Yeah, it's still a significant house.
What is Grant? It's a lovely driveway down into it, isn't it?
Beautiful driveway. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
It's
Yeah, and it's a kind of an island, then we say, with all the trees growing around the place. You've seen
Yeah.
nothing else, you know.
Yeah.
And is there a graveyard at the back of it there?
Yeah, Springfield,
Yes.
The graveyard Seamus in there.
Yes, that was where the Chapel of Ease was for the Fitzgeralds, you know.
Right.
Above it, Kilaughillihan, where the parish priest lived, you know. He went down to say mass on the Sunday whenever he went down to site. And there's a field there called Portgeen on Taggart, you know, where he left his horse when he said mass for the Fitzgeralds. And it was a lovely church, which is destroyed in the rebellion. In the Desmond Rebellion, but I know enough about it that it was an ornamental church. It was an awful pity. There's still some bit standing. Hopefully it will stay that way. There was a Protestant church then built in front of it in 1812, small Protestant church. The government came under pressure for having funded Maynooth and to keep the Protestant, the established church quiet. They built all these small churches around, and so Musgrave takes it over. Although he's a free thinker himself, you know, they say he's buried down the field, you know. Was
that a Payne church, James Payne? Was that designed by James Payne?
The original gable would have been a Catholic church, Tom would say.
No, but the Protestant church, was that a James Payne church? Was that designed by Payne?
The Payne
brothers. Tell you
brothers.
that, no, but it was knocked anyway about 1960, I think. They sold it, you know, the church representative body sold it. And it was bought by two farmers who bust up the lovely stone.
But getting back to Springfield, a lot of people would remember the last Lord Musgrave.
Right.
He worked in the regional hospital.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I suppose there's a Gordon Lord Musgrave, his son, but he's outside in South Africa.
South Africa, yeah.
He's responsible for all the improvements that have been done in the castle.
Townhouse, is he?
Oh, he's Robert Dean is his name.
Yeah. Because the last fella, Seamus, I'll give you a laugh. I made a green velvet jacket for the last man. Would you believe it? That's one. A velvet jacket I made him. And I tell you, the day I made it, I made another one the same time for a big man, Frank O'Connor, you see?
Right.
When Musgrave came in to collect his coat, he was a very small, thin man.
Right.
I gave him his velvet jacket because he tried it on, it was perfect. But the day he came in to collect it, I gave him his velvet jacket anyway and took it away home, paid me for it and went away. But I got a call the following day from him. He said, Mr. Browne, there's a problem with the jacket. I said, how's there a problem with the jacket? You know, it's a bit big for me. Well, when he came in, he had Frankie O'Connor's coat to wrap around him twice, you know. I never copped that. I gave him the wrong coat, you know. But at least I was able to give him his own one anyway, you know. But that was the man. And he had a plaque on the door in the regional.
Right.
And it said on it, Lord Musgrave.
I remember it, all right. Yes.
It was on the door. I remember that, seeing that go down the door, you know. I couldn't get over it. How there could be a Lord working inside in the regional.
All right.
Know,
okay.
At the time. I didn't know much about Lords that time. I'm talking about the 70s now. You know.
It was entailed, of course, and he had four. His father had. There were four boys in the generation before him, and it passed to one after the other. And he was the son of the fourth brother. It was an entailed estate. That's how he inherited it.
Yeah.
I said the late 50s, maybe.
Yeah.
What's the connection with Jonathan Sykes and the Musgraves?
Jonathan Sykes married the daughter then.
Betty
Sykes. And she's a brother. She's a sister of the man that's the present Lord Musgrave who lives in South Africa.
She's a sister of the man in South Africa. Yeah.
Jonathan Sykes. Yeah. And they had what you call it there, Seamus. They went into venison in a big way, didn't they?
Right. Yes, they have. Yeah, it was. There was an interesting restaurant there. All right.
Yeah. I don't think I'd be a lover of venison now. Would you? Would you eat venison?
I've never eaten it, but I often threaten to go over to do so. All right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Anyway, but I never ate venison now. But there was a big thing at the time that they weren't the only ones now. There was a big push there in the 80s to get venison kind of, what can I say, on the table.
Okay.
There were a good few. There were about 5 big dealers in. There was a fella down in Tipperary, I remember as well, and down at Kilbenny, and they were pushing this deer.
Right. You wouldn't hear very much about it now, like. Yeah.
It never took off, you know.
I don't think so, no.
No, just like they tried to push ostrich.
I think there was a market where fellas were getting into the trade, like. It was like Shanahan's stamps, so long as you fellas kept going, like.
Shanahan's stamps. And you bring him, what's his name into it now? What was your man? Paul something, wasn't it?
That's right. And when they sold the stamps, they made money on it. You know.
Paul, what was your man that was involved in that? There was a fellow involved in that. Paul
I can see him all right.
I can't think of him now. He was involved in the stamps, the big stamps. The thing. But that's like collecting stamps and collecting banknotes and collecting coins, isn't it? There's a lot of people like that, you know. Anyway, we'll move along swiftly. Getting back to landlords. You mentioned the plumbers. When we call it sounds terrible, the girl of the plumbers. When the plumber's daughter married a croak, right?
Right.
They went to live then down in Cork, at Castle Cork.
That's right. Well, up towards Mallow, North Cork now, Tom.
Yeah.
It to be North Cork.
Where Croak himself then
was
born in the house there, which have done a lovely job at Kilbrain, actually.
I think they were working. He was working for Dean Freeman.
Freeman.
And he was famous, that fella, you know, for he held the world of Catholic land, you know, as his own. Land that would be confiscated if it was in Catholic hands under the penal laws, but he took nominal ownership of a lot of estates. So they had a good old record, you know.
Freeman, is it?
I think it was Dean Freeman, you know.
You're right. And then if one of the Freemans married a Jackson, they became Freeman Jackson.
You know, they had a big house up there, and I can't.
Castle Cork.
Yeah, it's above Liscall now, between Liscall and towards Burton side there.
Yeah. But one of the
Castle Cork, I think is what it was.
Castle Cork, Castle Cork. And Freeman Jackson's daughter then married Petersham outside.
That's true.
Well, he's now Lord Harrington, actually. He's Viscount Petersham. She was his first wife. She was...
those beaches are still there, Tony, you know. They're up that country. The beaches are still up there, yeah. There was one of them, a famous horseman, you know, and he got thrown at a water fence one time. And they said it was the first time he drank water without whiskey in it.
Was that where Beecher's Brook came from?
I
suppose they're the same family, I think, you know.
Yeah.
I think so.
Is that on today, or was the Grand National on today, or am I mistaken?
I'm not sure of that now, Tom.
But there was some race. But there was so much about the Prince Philip on television that there's no other news.
Right. Okay.
That could no never know. We're staying clear of that now.
You had another gentry family then. You had the Herons of Heronsbrook.
Oh yeah.
I forgot about them.
I'm saying that there was a string of, and what's important about them is that they were old Irish stock. You know, they all had strong Irish connections. We'll say Fitzmaurice was an Irish connection, you know, and the Plumbers had the Geraldine thing, you know. So it's not black and white at all.
No.
So the Herons were actually there from Cromwellian times, and
how did they hold on to their land?
They became Protestant.
Oh yeah,
they conformed. Yeah. They did.
But how did they acquire land, Seamus? The Herons?
I would say that had the least, Tony, originally, and when they conformed to the established church, then it changed everything. Like only Catholics could not own land. Like.
Are the Herons all gone now? There's no Herons left.
They're all gone. Actually, there were 2 brothers and a sister, and they finished, and. one was a medical doctor. He was Ned, was his name. He was the main man, you know. And he did locum for a friend of his in the workhouse in Newcastle. He caught fever and he died. He died young man, 42 or something. And that the brother and sister kind of threw in the towel at that stage. You know that.
Did they leave?
They had a beautiful old house with, I'm sure, 300 years old, with 6 feet of thatch in it. But it went on fire in 1917. And I often wonder if the photograph is in any of the national collections. But so they were there an awful long time, all right. And all the gentry came to help them out. They wouldn't accept it. They moved into a granary or something. That was the finish of a granary building in the yard, you know.
Yeah, good. What's his name right afterwards, Seamus? He was the vet. What was his name? Boyce.
Oh, yes, that's right.
He was a funny fella, him. I met him a few times.
Right. Well, the father, Patrick was the father, and Mike was the son. Mike was the local vet here.
Oh, so was his son. He was funny. I met him a couple of times, and I remember finding out that he lived in Heavensbrook, you know, but the house was gone at that stage, you know.
Right.
But you completely forget about the Heavens. Although they're listed as magistrates. They're in a couple of Tom's directories now.
Okay.
And they're magistrates.
All right.
And I was wondering where this Heavensbrook was, you know, at the time, years ago.
Okay.
I'd never heard of it, you know.
Okay. There was 167 acres in the home place, and they had a large lease of one of the Sullivan estates, or part of the Sullivan estate.
Yeah.
In Donovan, that's it. You know.
Yeah.
So that had been but there was a lot of gentry people along the run here. Same in Drum.
Even further over, you Drew's Court, over on the other side. I know it's a bit away, like, but Drew's Courthouse.
Oh, yes.
Well, now.
Right. They actually own land here in Bradford, the Drews.
The Drews,
yes. That's Ballyhill Grand now.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 10 miles over, I suppose.
Yeah. Sorry, Tom, go ahead. Tom, you're going to say something there.
No, I was just trying to locate where Hernsbrook. It's between Mount Plummer and Ashford, is it?
That's right, Tom. Yeah, I should.
And if you're driving back, what? It's on the right as you go back, isn't it?
No, they're all on the left as you go back.
What are they?
It's about you have the rise of ground to the left.
Right.
Say plumbers first and Stabley's then, you know.
Yeah.
Boyce is all right, or we say Herons is down to the right, all right.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, Hernsbrook, yeah.
But there were a fair amount of big houses around there. But then, as you went back towards Tornafulla and back towards Mount Collins, the land is bad, isn't it?
Well, it does. Before you get to Axford, actually, it changes, you know. But we said two of those houses were victims of the war, you know, Tony. That during the Civil War, Sean Moylan claimed Bradford to be in his brigade area, right? Military brigades don't go by county boundaries. And the Free State Army occupied Corrimore House, right? And he sent his own troops to occupy Glenduff Castle, right? And there was a bit of a mini civil war which was solved without shooting when the Free State pulled back for Rockbarton, where their headquarters was in Bruff. And he occupied the second house. The Republican soldiers occupied Glenduff and Corrimore. And when the artillery took Newcastle, you know, when the Free State Army took Newcastle, they had a slash and burn policy. So they burned both houses and retreated to County Cork. That was the finish of both places.
We were down at Sean Moylan's grave with J.J. Reardon, Tony and I, just before the COVID, Tony.
There was a talk where down at Seamus, down in what's the name of the village again? I can't think of the village. Kishcame. Where Father J.J. Reardon gave a talk there. And J.J. is a nephew of Sean Moylan.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's in the Redemptorist Church here in Limerick. Father J.J.
I know the man, all right. I know that. Yeah, he's still to the good, Tony, you say?
Yes.
He's a lot in his head, all right.
I was talking to him last week. I was talking to him last week. He's still hearty. Yeah.
He's good. Yeah. Right. Well, down to Kishcame, we talked there 2 years ago.
Right.
And very good guy he was. And he was on about. I never knew that Sean Moylan was in the painting. The painting they have it on the Crusher that was done by Sean Keating.
Oh
But they
yeah.
have this painting done, and the priest is there. He's looking at the New Ireland, like, the building of Arbor.
I know.
John Moylan actually is in the picture. He's in that
Okay.
painting. I never knew that till that day.
And Keating did another famous one for the Men of the South, Tony.
Yeah.
To the
That's
RMA.
it. That's it.
Father
That's it.
Aurelian's father is in it.
That's it. Yeah, that's the painting.
Okay, Men of the South, yeah.
And,
His father was picked out as one of them. I had him tell a story about the fight at Clonbannon. I mentioned it earlier, And you see, they had to break off because there were 2 armoured cars that they couldn't knock out. And they were, how many ways they were from it anyway, but they went into a farmhouse, his father and another man with him who had been in the ambush. And they said, was there any chance of food, And they got food, of course, but he was sitting down on the side, and the farmer said the woman was getting the food for them, and the man of the house said, I suppose you were at the ambush. And Redden said, well, he said, we were near it. And Nor Cockman said, well, he had a good day for it anyway. A very Irish thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, the day we were in Kishgame, we didn't get a good day. It rained cats and dogs.
That day was something else. Was,
that was a British general killed at that ambush. Only he was the officer commanding Donovan barracks. I forget what his name was now. But he jumped out of his car, and the last thing he said was, "Give him the lead."
We give Tom Toomey a ring there. He'll give it a name.
He's
Yeah, but that I couldn't think of it. I can never think of the name. I was trying to remember the name of that painting now. The Men of the South. It's the property now of the SB. Well, at least they have it anyway. Yeah, they have it.
I saw Keating on the television one time, and he's looking at modern art.
Yeah.
And it's a chair. It resembles a chair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Whoever was interviewing him asked him, what did he think of it? And of course, he didn't think much of it, He said he thought it was something for a man with a bowel complaint.
Well, actually, speaking of that, I saw Shea Healy died today, and he had a program, like doing an arts program, and he had Twink on it and Lee Dunn. And they were talking about a painting, and it was just a picture of the sun and a red dot at the end, or a picture of the moon. And Twink was saying that it expressed loneliness, and the sun, the small sun, expressed how dull the world was. And Lee Dunn leant over and said, that red dot in the corner means to a soul. It's nothing to do with the painting.
That could happen, because I know if I was given a poem one night all about the space station, and I said to him afterwards, the North Star he was looking at, he thought it was it was staying in the sky, and he wrote a lovely poem. This is the North Star, says I were watching.
He wasn't from Bradford, no? He wasn't from Bradford. Was he from Bradford?
What's who now, Tom?
The poet. No, the poet he's talking about.
No.
Well, I suppose maybe our shopkeeper is Tony.
Shopkeeper. That's a different man I was talking about. Oh, no. The shopkeeper man wouldn't write anything, wouldn't be that stupid now. Oh, no. The shopkeeper man was a different story altogether with his quick pick, isn't it?
Right, okay.
The quick pick, does he pick many quicks over there, I wonder, Anyway.
But Seamus, how is the village of Bradford doing now?
It's doing quite well, Tony. Tom, it's prosperous looking anyway, certainly.
Yeah.
And sort of activity, and of course there would be a strong agricultural base, and that has become very industrialized. I don't have to tell you, it is.
They have a nice plaque down at the end of the village there, They have a nice mural down at the end of the village.
Yes, we have an industrial estate there now, and they're doing quite well, At the same time, that I suppose rural Ireland is really banged up, there were a lot of places that are doing badly, small towns in particular.
But
I would say the pullback of these banks, that's not a good thing. It's a bad indicator that the people in charge of money see no future really when they're pulling back their banks,
No. And the thing about it is, we said people in their 70s and 80s who are used to going to the post office or the bank in a local place like Broadford. I mean, asking them to go online or to travel into Newcastle West or Limerick, it's not good enough. No.
Yeah.
But see,
I mean, the bank in Newcastle was the only one to survive in West Limerick. Field went, Keel went one after the other.
Yeah, Askeaton. Major towns.
Yeah, I think the state, like, there's too much of a pullback from the state, really.
Yeah.
But that's maybe that's EU pressure. I couldn't say.
It's the old laissez-faire.
It is like going back to the Whigs and the Lord Russell coming in 1846, like, and letting the thing take its own way. Whereas before that, Pitt had done a lot, like, to try and save the people.
Yeah, we had Hiram Wood here one night talking about the Quakers, and they did, like you acknowledged that in your book. The Quakers did a lot for during the famine.
Oh, they did. They were great people.
Like they couldn't deal with the problem, but it would probably be a lot worse only for their.
Right. But after 4 years, Tom, they stopped. The Quakers, and they said they could see no permanent good from the work they had done. They were bright people because they were Christian in the sense that the wealth they had made, they felt that they should share it with people.
That's right. Yeah,
no other Christian body done it, like.
No.
They looked after their own ins and out of it, like. They left it to the government, like.
Yeah.
Only for the Quakers doing what they did, I would say they'd have been catastrophe by 46, 47, like. Whereas it lasts an awful long time, The potato failed for 7 years. In parts of Ireland. Failed in West Limerick, and it failed in West Clare and North Cork.
It was famine on famine. Just year after year.
At the same time, there was a famine in the Highlands of Scotland, and it lasted 10 years. The potato failed for 10 years. So, and then same story there, But,
and there was you came across as well. There was a fellow in Limerick called Richard Pine Coffin, and he was transferred to Scotland. A terrible name for a fellow doing famine relief. Richard Pine Coffin.
Oh, that's right. He was a senior British civil servant, all right.
Yeah, he was
terrible names, all right.
Yeah, he was transferred to Scotland.
Yeah,
because they reckon Scotland was doing worse, like
Right.
But there was terrible famines around Europe at the time, and Scotland suffered very badly in the Highlands. But I think your book shows, like, that in remote parts of West Limerick where people thought we weren't, like, before you wrote your book, people would have said West Limerick wasn't that badly affected. It was West Cork.
Yeah, they got a very bad in East Limerick too. I was inside in there near the church there, and a lady came up to me from Mungret about my book. It was new at the time now. She'd read it and she had an interest in history, but she was saying what I wrote about Mungret didn't come down orally or in written form. I'd like to. There were terrible murders and everything all around that country.
Oh yeah.
I'd say this for the Limerick peasantry. They didn't lie down, like.
No.
It was very violent. Whereas I remember I mentioned Archdeacon Fitzgerald, when he's in Ballingarry, and he was writing to the government and threatening them that they should remember that the men of Connalaw, that's the Baronies, they were up at Connalaw, and not like the men of Muskerry, that's outside in North Cork, who crawled into dikes and ditches and died like dogs.
Yeah. He was a great man for writing letters, Fitzgerald, wasn't he?
He was all right.
The newspapers, but
I one thing about him, I know a good bit about the man now, because as I say, where I'm living, he built it, But he had all the honours of the church. They brought back the title of Archdeacon, to honour him and this kind of stuff. But when it came to dying, he has to be buried with his father and mother. I thought that was, that it meant something, that maybe at the end of the day, he might, and then their hostility to the Irish language, was disastrous, But that's all history now.
But they could, Go on, Tony, sorry. No.
Do you guys know what we're here over in now?
Come on, Tony. You're dismissed. I'll be dismissed shortly, so then, will I?
You can chuck it on you. I want my support. Anyway.
Right. Okay.
First of all, just to thank you for coming on.
Very good, Tony. I enjoyed
A
it.
few minor hiccups, but we finally got there in the end, you know.
Yes, we did. We had some
And
technical problems.
It's given a new side of Limerick now that we haven't touched on.
All right.
Especially around the south of the county, you know,
southwest, I suppose, yeah.
Did you ever hear of a land out now, just before I go now? Did you hear of a land out called Dunscombe?
Say it again, Tom, what's his name?
Dunscombe. Dunscombe. Dunscombe.
No, I didn't.
You know what he owned now?
No.
He owned Fuller. Liam, I'm sure you know Willie Linehan. Well, some call him Willie, more call him Liam Linehan. Liam Fuller. Liam told me that Dunscombe owned a lot of land going back towards Mount Collins and that.
Where was he living, Tony?
In Cork.
In Cork, yeah.
And they had a march to Cork, which they walked it all the way down to Cork.
Okay.
Looking for a reduction in the rent.
Yes. All right.
You can imagine the response they got, you know.
All right.
They wanted to get Dunscombe. Would he reduce the rent? And there's no way. He owned a fair amount of land now, a lot of land going back, mountainy land.
Okay.
Mount Collins, that general area around there, you know.
Okay.
And I'd never heard of him, Dunscombe. I checked him up afterwards. I've discovered now who he was.
Okay.
But when Liam Linehan told me about him, no, I'd never heard of him.
All right.
So,
okay. I never heard of him.
I just wanted to know, like, you know,
right.
he wouldn't have been a resident now, we'll say, in the county. He was. I forget his address now in Cork, where he lived in Cork, you know.
Okay.
But, I must look him up again to find out how he came into that land. I don't know.
All right. Okay.
That he's passing it, like, but usually through marriage or in couple with the States that Adam came in, you know.
Yes. Okay.
Because during the couple with the States, a lot lost and a lot gained as well.
Okay. But they did all right.
You know. Anyway, we'll move along. Seamus, thank you for coming on.
Very good, Tony.
Long time no see, but we
I enjoyed it.
And once you see what a fella looks like, you kind of forget what a fella looks like.
All right.
You know,
very good, Tony.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Tom, as well for coming on. And I'm about to cut both you off now.